It's Ann Kaplan from Mom Me and Ann Kaplan Childbirth Services, and I'm coming to you live again for my second broadcast in Lifelong Learning Week. And it is so important. I hope I explained to you sufficiently why it's so important. We've been having a good discussion in the Whole Woman Happy Family group with some of my mama clients about how learning something new completely kind of bleeds over into all the different parts of your life. And that's what we talked about on Tuesday. But today what I'm going to talk about is how do you even manage to figure that out in your life? And especially, how do you even value that when you have so much other stuff going on in your life? So here's what I'm going to tell you. First of all, it's like you don't have to make a conscious effort to value lifelong learning. That doesn't change the fact that it's actually fundamental to your mental health and just your human nature. So you can, it's kind of like saying well, you don't have to decide whether or not you're going to believe in gravity. It's just a fact. The human body, the human mind craves knowledge and is plastic and is constantly changing and growing, and there's nothing you can do about that. So you already are a lifelong learner, whether you want to be or not. So that's point number one. How? You are already doing it, whether you want to or not. And I'm going to give you an example of what I mean. So before I started Mom Me, I was a birth doula, and I had a practice, but it was, I had to kind of chill it out a lot because we had young children, especially after our fourth kid was born. I really had to take a year off from doing on-call work and stuff like that. So, my life was a lot more kind of just I'm going to say empty, but it just didn't have a lot going on in it outside of my family. And so I didn't really notice that I was doing this until I actually literally sat down to write down my notes for today's broadcast. And I was like, when's a time in my life where I really had a hard time learning new things and I couldn't find time to do it? And I realized that before I started Mom Me, by the time I started Mom Me, I had gone through a period where I decided to make all of my Christmas presents one year. I decided to make them by hand, every single one. And then I also, I joined 3 book clubs. I was in 3 book clubs simultaneously. I decided to completely redecorate our house from scratch. I was like, you know what? I've never decorated a room from scratch before. I think I'm going to give that a try. And also, anybody who knows that I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and it was that little thing that clued me into all these other things, because the more and more dissatisfied I got with my life and feeling like I needed something more and all of that stuff, the more my obsession with podcasts was getting out of control. I was listening to them all the time. I had my headphones in. I would listen to podcasts while I cook dinner. When I go to bed at night, when I probably should be paying attention to my kids. I'm walking down the street, driving in my car all the time. And I actually subscribed to 30 different podcasts. And it was becoming a problem. My kids were characterizing me as this podcast lady. And one time my husband was like, why do you have to listen to all this stuff? I listen to people talking to me all day long. I can't, the idea of just having a voice in my head talking all day long makes me want to puke or whatever. And I was just like, Mike, I really didn't realize it until he asked me. But when I had to defend myself, I was like, Mike, this is literally the only mental stimulation in my life some days. Listening to a podcast is literally the only adult interaction I'm having with people. It is my brain was in survival mode, and I needed something. I found this one possible way where I could have mental stimulation and learn and grow and stay connected to the world outside me without having to not be able to accommodate what it was like for me to have kids. And now I look back on it, I was like, OMG, hello, what an amazing illustration of how crucial lifelong learning is to you. It's such a huge part of me. Before I started this practice and finally found something that I could do with my time that was nourishing and I was passionate about, I was doing crafting all the time. I landscaped my entire house. I learned how to sew. I made Halloween costumes from scratch. I all these podcasts, book groups, like homemade gifts. I started canning. Like, not that there's anything wrong with any of that stuff, but it's so clear now in retrospect how I was just scrambling to just find something that I could feel proud of and that would push me, and I was learning something new and using my brain and thinking and all this stuff. I mean, and now I work with moms all the time. I see the exact same pattern. It's such a red flag to me that when I was in the thick of it, I just thought like, oh, it's cool, I'm like Martha Stewart. Which, it's great to be like that, but not if you're doing it because you're literally just like dying a slow death in your brain from atrophy. So I want to tell you guys how you can figure this stuff out for you. So first, I want to just give you guys some examples of the ways that you can weave in mental stimulation, lifelong learning, pushing yourself, setting goals, that kind of stuff, and especially just learning something new. It could be anything, just like an interesting fact even. So here are some, and these are just the tip of the thinking outside of the box iceberg, but you can take a class, obviously, like I took guitar lessons, I joined a new gym, blah, blah, blah. We talked about that on Tuesday, but you can also take an online class. Like I teach childbirth education online because so many people just have a hard time getting places to do stuff, and all my coaching is online and all that stuff. So, you could take a class online. You can listen to podcasts like I did. Read a book or join a book club is even more awesome because you get to socialize too, which is a whole nother level of the self-care pillar of mommy. And also, start a new hobby, take a sewing class or a knitting class or something like that. Learn something on YouTube even. But the other thing that I think is awesome is, like, all of my clients, for example, like this week in the Whole Woman Happy Family group, we're talking about how, like, you are learning something new by doing this program. You have chosen to spend time investing in yourself, learning something new, pushing yourself to a new level. And if what I want you guys to think about when you're thinking about what you want to do to weave in lifelong learning is, obviously you need to think about your circumstances, but too often as parents we think about our limitations first, and then we don't really actually even think about what we want. We just think about, well, I can't do this because of that, and I can't do this because the kids are napping, and I guess I have to do something online because I don't have any babysitters or whatever. Don't start from there. So that's my first tip to you. Start with what you want, not all the things that are blocking you from getting there. So if there's something you've always been curious about, like I always wanted to play the guitar, but I couldn't. I never did it because I was too scared or whatever. So if there's something like that in your life, like that's super important. Instead of saying like, oh, well, I always wanted to play guitar, but forget it, that ship has sailed or whatever. No, just think about what you want, or think about who you want to be with. Do you want to be by yourself? Do you want to do it at home? That kind of thing. But the most important thing is like something that you've always wanted to learn. And it's not about your kids. You're learning something new that's for you. Like the thing that's stimulating to me about being a parent coach isn't kids. It's the fact that I get to work with people in a capacity that I love, and I'm also learning this whole, the behind the scenes part of mommy, of running a business and being an entrepreneur. That is so stimulating and interesting to me. So that's my first tip. Start with what you want. Think about what you want. Is something you've always been interested in, or if you don't have something like that, think about your personality. Like, well, what kinds of things do I like? That kind of thing. The second, my second and third tips are include kids is tip number 2. And the third tip is don't include your kids because, once again, start with what you want. Like if you want to do something that's like, and something that's a pursued learning thing that involves your children, you want to spend more time with your children, involving your kids is a great way to find the time to learn something new. If they're old enough, you guys can learn something together, like take a sewing class together or whatever. If they're really, really young and the thing you want to learn is something that they can be participating in, like, I don't know, like a mommy and me yoga class or something like that, you can do that too. But the reason why tip 3 is don't include your kids is because for a lot of us, we really need time to pursue something that's just for us and without having to be momming while we're doing it. So really check in with yourself and be honest. There's no right or wrong answer for this, and I can tell you with with no shame whatsoever that until about maybe like 6 months ago, my answer to this question was always don't include your kids. Like, I just needed a break. And it wasn't until, recently, when my kids have gotten to a certain level of maturity, I've gotten to a certain level of maturity. Now I actually am like, it'd be really fun if I brought Elijah with me on this such and such trip. Or, oh, Sky would love it here. Why didn't I think to bring him or whatever? But that is very recent, you guys. And I don't feel bad whatsoever about the last 12 years of my life saying, no kids, thank you. I'm constantly trying to carve out a break for myself. So no judgment there. And the last tip I want to give you on how to learn something new and how to weave lifelong learning into your life is a mindset shift. What a surprise. I've never talked about mindset, right? No, I'm talking about inner game. I'm giving you an inner game tip like I always do, the huge. Here is the tip, and this is what I said in the Hustle into Harmony teleseminar on Sunday, and I really think it illustrates a good point. I see it all the time with my mamas, which is if your kid came home to you today and said, I need to bring a dozen cupcakes to school today, hurry, you would find a way to make that happen. You would marginalize and demote everything else that was happening in your time to make a way to make this happen, because you would do that because you value your kid and you've prioritized your kids. And all of a sudden, these 1 dozen muffins are the most important thing, or 1 dozen cupcakes are the most important thing in your life because you can't let your kid down. The mindset tip, the inner game tip is you are just as important as a dozen cupcakes, okay? If you want to include lifelong learning in your life because you know that it's super important to your happiness, your well-being, your continued sanity, all of those things are worth way, way, way more than a dozen cupcakes. So if you can find time to show up for your kid with a dozen cupcakes, find time to show up for your kid and yourself by recognizing the things that you need in your life to keep you happy, fulfilled, and balanced. And I promise you that learning is one of those things, because it's just human nature. It's a scientific fact. Learning and continued mental stimulation are super important, you guys. And speaking of the Hustle into Harmony teleseminar, I'm still offering audio recordings of that teleseminar. So if you missed the teleseminar and you want to check it out, if you feel like what we're talking about today is making you want to learn it and you didn't even know you wanted to learn it, all you have to do is comment below. I will hook you up with the audio recording, and I cannot wait to share it with you. I'm so, so proud of it. And I'm really, really pumped of like how much response I got to Tuesday's video. A lot of people have asked for this audio. I'm about to get on a call with one of our amazing mamas in this group right now and do her breakthrough session. And she is my top priority, which means I need to be timely. I need to be off of here. So have an amazing Thursday, everybody. Think about how to incorporate lifelong learning in your life. Ask yourself if you're as important as a cupcake. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye.